Rouse Park presentation. This presentation, we're going to focus on the year 1900. That year, we had the Tom Horn scare where he was putting threatening notes on people's doors, and also he killed a couple people in Browns Park. Also had Grizzly Bear stories from that year. Hi, my name's Charlie Wardle. I'm the author of two books, Browns Park Haunted History and John Jarvie. I have been studying Browns Park history for a long time and even love to go there and been living there for a while. In the year 1900, many citizens were scared to be living in Browns Park, and some even left. In 1900, there were grizzly bears attacked, threatening notes left on people's homes. People were shot by a hidden gunman. One man had his stomach sliced open by his friend. Amos Herb Bassett loses two fingers and his thumb. In December of 1899, Herb scratched the back of his right hand on a wire from a bucket. After a couple of weeks, the scratch became infected. The scratch was not healing. In January, it was decided to take Herb to Rock Springs to see a doctor. Once they arrived in Rock Springs, it was discovered that the scratch had turned to blood poisoning. The doctor had to amputate Herb's thumb and the third and fourth finger to stop the poisoning. There's a picture of Herb with his right hand all wrapped up and just having two fingers left. And a newspaper article in Craig, Colorado, Craig Courier on the 20th, 1900 of January, talks about Herb going to the Rock Springs to see the doctor and having blood poisoning and having his fingers amputated. Grizzly bears in Browns Park. First reported person killed by a grizzly bear in the area occurred in 1889. An immigrant was traveling and was killed by a grizzly bear in Browns Park. It was reported in the Cheyenne Daily Sun. The Roxbury Miner reported the following on July 13th, 1899. Hunter R.W. Bryan of Mayville, Colorado, killed a grizzly bear southeast of Mayville. During the fight with the bear, Bryan's arm was broken and cut from the powerful blow from the bear. Bryan was able to kill the bear with two shots from his Winchester rifle. He only had two bullets in the rifle and was lucky. This bear killing made residents around Mabel and Browns Park afraid. Grizzly bear across the river from the John Jarvie place. This story is from the Vernal Express, June 16, 1900. Hatching Dennis and his son just had crossed the river on the Jarvie Ferry. They were going south when the huge grizzly bear came over the hill towards the ferry. Members of the posse who were at the Jarvie place fired at the grizzly bear and wounded him. The bear took off. One of Jarvie's sons and Dennis' sons took off after the grizzly on horseback without guns. A cowboy from the posse crossed the river and caught up with the grizzly bear and was able to lasso the bear. The bear started pulling on the rope, bringing the cowboy and horse towards him. The rope was fast to the horn of the saddle. Soon, another member of the posse caught up with the cowboy and lassoed bear and was able to kill it. Jarvie's son and Dennis' son had a good laugh as they watched the whole thing happen. Now, the top picture is actually a picture of the John Jarvie ferry. It was taken, though, after John Jarvie had died, and the Taylor family was running the ferry then. They have a sheep crossing right there. This picture comes from the Taylor and Allen family collection. And the bottom picture is what's left of the ferry today, has the three big planks where the ferry was docked with the ferry pole there. This is a picture of the newspaper article that covered the story about the grizzly bear. It's from the Vernal Express, June 16, 1900. Jim McKnight, Josie's first husband, being shot. Josie Bassett McKnight and Jim McKnight were going through divorce. Jim felt the best way to avoid divorce was to stay in Utah and keep out of Colorado, where the divorce papers were filed. Jim took their two sons, Crawford and Amos, to his mother's in Salt Lake and to his sisters in Smithfield, Utah. Josie became sick and wrote Jim a letter asking him to come see her at their ranch house on Beaver Creek, just over the border in Colorado. Jim came on April 4th, 1900. Deputy Sheriff Harris, who was at the house, tried to serve him some divorce papers for the hearing in Colorado. Jim tried to get on his horse and leave, but he was shot in the back by Harris. At first, it was thought that the bullet wound was fatal. After several operations and x-rays in Salt Lake, Jim survived the shooting, but carried the bullet in his body the rest of his life, and x-rays was a new thing back then. There's a picture of Amos and Crawford when they're young, and a picture of Jim McKnight. A couple of newspaper articles about the shooting of Jim McKnight. First one's come from the Craig Courier, April 14th, 1900. It says that, Jim was fatally shot and he was not expected to live. The next one actually comes from the Rocky Mountain News and Jim McKnight's friends wanting to lynch um, Harris for shooting Jim McKnight. Josie and Jim McKnight's cabin on Beaver Creek. When Josie and Jim were married, Josie's uncle Sam Bassett gave them land on Beaver Creek, and on that land they built a cabin. That cabin is still standing today on Beaver Creek. It's on the wildlife refuges. Now, it is said that the shooting of Jim McKnight actually saved his life because he would have been Tom Horn's number one target if he was still in Browns Park. Tom Horn. Tom Horn was born November 21st, 1860, to Thomas and Mary Ann Miller Horn in Scotland County in Missouri. At age 16, Tom worked for the U.S. Army as a scout during the Apache War. Tom also worked for the Pinkerton detectives as a killer for hire. It was said that Tom Horn had killed 17 people in his life. James Hicks, aka Tom Horn. Tom Horn was hired by Orr Hardy and other big ranchers in Wyoming and Colorado to put a stop to the cattle rustling. He was a killer for hire. He first came to Brown Park as James Hicks and worked for several of the cattle ranchers, including Matt Rash. In the early summer of 1900, notes were placed on several ranchers' doors in Browns Park telling the rancher to leave Browns Park or be killed. The ladies of Browns Park did not like James Hicks, aka Tom Horn. Ann Bassett tells how she had words with James Hicks of how he told stories of killing Indians. Also, Ann did not like how James Hicks looked at women. Ann and Josie said there's something odd about James Hicks. He's not the stock buyer he claims to be. Josie also did not care for James Hicks, but kept her thoughts to herself. Directing notes pinned on doors during the night. The note said, "You are requested to leave the country to parts unknown within 30 days, or you will be killed. 30 days for your life." Many residents of Browns Park woke up with a note on their door telling them to leave or be killed. A few residents left, but most stayed, wondering who had put the threatening note on their door. Matt Rash, Ann Bassett's fiance, born January 4th, 1865 in Axton, Texas, to Samuel and Mary Allison Rash. Matt Rash initially came to Browns Park in 1882 with the cattle herd. Matt Rash became president of the Browns Park Cattle Association. When Sarah Bomer died on January 1900, Matt Rash helped transport her body to Craig, Colorado for burial. This trip may have been when Matt and Ann Bassett became engaged. Matt was 13 years older than Ann. Matt Rash assassination, July 1900. On July 7th, 1900, Matt Rash came back from town and stopped at the Bassett Ranch. He then went to his ranch in Browns Park at Stony Springs. Next day, Matt went up to his summer range on Cold Spring Mountain. Matt had lunch set up on the table and had his boots off standing in the doorway when he was shot. Matt spun around and a second bullet hit him. One shot in the back, one shot in the chest. Matt dragged himself to his bed where he died. On July 10th, 14-year-old Felix Myers discovered Matt Rash's dead body. Matt was buried by his cabin. When Matt's father came, he took Matt's body to Axton, Texas. James Hicks, aka Tom Horn, tried to blame Ice and Dart for the killing, but all the Browns Park residents knew that Ison would not kill anyone. Now, there's a picture of what's left of Matt Rash's cabin on Cold Springs Mountain, just pretty much the foundation there, and a picture of Matt Rash. Paper article about Matt Rash assassination from the Craig Courier, uh, July 21st, 1900. Matt Rash assassinated, killed in his cabin in Browns Park while eating lunch, shot in the back and through the right breast. One of his horses were also killed. There's no clue to who the murderer was. Now, there's a picture of me and my wife at Matt Rash's cabin on Cold Spring Mountain. Matt Rash's body found by Felix Myers. 14-year-old Felix Myers was riding by Matt Rash's summer cabin when he decided to stop. Felix found Matt's dead body laying on the bed. The horse outside was also shot dead outside the cabin. What Felix saw changed his life forever. Felix went to get help at the Bassett Ranch. When help came, they buried Matt's body near his cabin. He was killed in. After seeing Matt Rash's dead body, Felix developed a twitch, which he had the rest of life. When age 7, Felix's mother, Mary Ashton Greenwood Myers Prescott, died, maybe killed by Indians. His dad, Frank Myers, died before Felix was born. The death of the family and Matt Rash had profound effect on Felix. Matt Rash was buried twice. When Matt's body was discovered in his cabin, it is said that the smell was so bad they had to wear rags soaked in kerosene when they buried Matt's body. Matt was first buried very close to his cabin, and there's a couple pictures of where he is buried. There's an impression in the ground right next there, and there's a mound of rocks and dirt right next to it that was once covered his grave. Matt Rash's body was moved to Axton, Texas. Matt Rash's dad came to Browns Park to settle up Matt's estate of his ranch and the cattle he owned. They dug up Matt's body and took it to their family burial plot in Axton, Texas. The headstone in Axton, Texas reads, Matt Rash, born July 4th, 1866, murdered in his cabin on his ranch in Cold Spring Mountain, Rock County, Colorado, July 8th, 1900. Matt and Queen Annie Bassett were engaged. Matt, aged 36, and Ann Bassett, aged 22, were working his ranch together. After receiving threatening notes, Matt made out a will, leaving the ranch to Ann. He also took out life insurance for $5,000 to be paid to his dad. Ann and Matt's dad, Samuel Rash, worked out a settlement together. Now there's a newspaper article. A couple of them, one from the Rocky Mountain News, August 12th, 1900. And this one actually refers to Queen Annie. It's the first recorded document I know of that Ann Bassett referred as Queen Annie. The other one, Rocky Mountain News, September 26, 1900, talks about them working out a settlement. Then there's the 1900 census has Matt Rash listed as age 36. Matt Rice cabins. A couple of pictures of his cabins. The first one is actually Matt Rice cabin on Cold Spring Mountain at, in Springs. That cabin is actually no longer standing. Only things left is the foundation. The other one is Matt's cabin in Browns Park at the Sterling Springs. That cabin is still standing, but it is on private land.
Ison Dart. Ison Dart was born in 1855 in Texas to Cyrus and Indiana Dart. Ison was the oldest of 10 children. He was also born as a slave. He came to Browns Park with Matt Rash in 1880 and worked for the Bass family. He was arrested for arson when he was part of a group that burned Henry Hoy's house down. He escaped before the trial took place. Ison was one great cowboy and a good bronc buster. There's a picture of Ison when he was a kid with his mom and dad, and Ison on a horse there. He's actually the fourth one from the right. Ison Dart, assassinated October 3rd, 1900. Ison was a well-liked rancher in Browns Park. Ison worked for the Bassett family and helped raise the Bassett children. Ison was at the Bassett Ranch the day Mary Elizabeth Bassett died from eruptive appendicitis in 1892. In the summer of 1900, several Browns Park residents received threatening notes telling them to leave the park or be killed. Ison received one of those notes. After the killing of his friend Matt Rash by assassin bullet, Ison always tried to have something with him for protection. On the morning of October 3rd, Ison came out of the cabin with the Bassett boys and Lou Brown when Ison was shot and killed. The assassin was hired to kill Tom Horn. Ison was one hell of a cowboy, written on his grave. There's a picture of Ison that's been redone by the Northwest Colorado Museum in Gray, Colorado, and a picture of me at his grave, and a picture of Ison taken in the studio. The guns there are all just a prop, and there's a marker on his grave that says Ison Dart, one hell of a cowboy. A newspaper article about the killing from the Craig Courier, October 13, 1900. Killing in Browns Park, Ison Dart shot down from an ambush. Another tragedy occurred in Browns Park. Thursday morning of last week, Ison Dart falling victim to assassinated bullet. The murder occurred on Cold Spring Ranch. Ison and George Bassett were walking together from the cabin to the corral when about 20 steps from the corral, a shot was fired from the direction of the corral, and Ison fell dead. Young Bassett ran back to the cabin, in which were Sam Bassett and Lou Brown, who saw Dart fall when he was shot. The 1900 Rock County, Colorado census lists Ison Dart, born in 1855, age 45, is from Texas, and his occupation was a farmer. And then there's a picture of his brand. It's actually at his grave with an ID over a bar. Then the cuffs he was wearing when he was shot, they're on display at the Colorado Museum, Northwest Colorado City in Craig, Colorado. Ann Bassett assassinated attempt in 1900. In late October or early November, Ann Bassett received a note. The note said, "You are requested to leave that country for parts unknown within 30 days or you will be killed. 30 days for your life." One evening in November, Ann was sitting in the Bassett house at the table. She got up to move as a shot rang out and hid in the place where Ann had been sitting. She would have been killed if she hadn't moved. All the lamps in the house were turned off, and everyone stayed in the house for the rest of the night until 11 a.m. the next day. Pete Lowe and Henry Hurdle came to the ranch. They found the location on the hillside where the shooter had shot from. Also, they found the family dog had been killed by the shooter. Sam Bassett and Will Morgan followed the shooter's trail to Baggs, Wyoming, where they lost the shooter's horse tracks. Sam Bassett ended up leaving Browns Park after this and never return. Sam was Ann Bassett's older brother. It's a newspaper article from the Craig Courier, December 8, 1900. It talks about Sheriff Farnham. He talks about the shootings in Browns Park, and he says he's doing all he can to find the killer. They just don't know who the shooter was. It also talks about Ann Bassett being shot at, and the note that Ann Bassett received, it said she received it on November 12, 1900. Other assassination attempts. Longhorn Elijah Thompson tells about being shot at while he's riding to Burno through Cross Canyon with his wife. He had to lay down in the back of the wagon as his wife drove the wagon. Longhorn claimed that he was the only one to survive attack from Tom Horn, but there were others. There's a picture of Longhorn Thompson with his wife and two of their kids. From the Craig Courier, December 1st, 1900. George Banks of Lake, Colorado was shot at. The bullet pierced his clothing by his heart, but did not hit his body. George rode his horse hard and fast to get away from the assassin. Tom Horn's hanging on November 21st, 1903. On November 21st, Tom Horn was hung for killing a young Willie Nickel boy. This is actually 3 years after the killings he did in Browns Park. The Nickel family were sheep herders, and the young Willie was wearing his dad's coat the day he was killed. The officer suspected Tom Horn and got him drunk to confess to the killing. All that Tom said was that would have been one hell of a shot. Tom never did confess to the killing, but Horn was found guilty and was sentenced to be hung.
A couple newspaper articles of Tom Horn in the news. Tom Horn did try to break from jail, and he didn't make it out of jail and was trying to run away when they caught him. The other one, talks about when he went to the gallows. Tom Horn meets his death with a smile on his lip. He walked firmly to the gallows while being bound, joked with the officers surrounding him, but never did confess to the killing of young boy Willie.
Charlie Krause slices Albert Speck Williams' stomach open. Charlie Krause was at the Upper Rock Saloon in Browns Park. Mary Krause sent Speck Williams over to the saloon to bring Charlie, her husband, home. The saloon was across the river, the Green River, from the Krause place. When Speck arrived at the saloon, Charlie was drunk, not ready to come home. Speck had some drinks with Charlie until he was ready to come home. Charlie was too drunk to ride a horse, so he got on the back of Speck's horse to ride double. As they crossed the river, a very drunk Charlie began to cuss at Speck. Charlie took out his knife and sliced Speck's stomach open, then pushed him off the horse. There's a picture of Albert Speck Williams there. Charlie went on home. Murray asked Charlie where Speck was. He said, "I killed that son of a bitch and left him by the river." Mary went down to the river and found Speck holding his guts in his stomach. Mary ran back and told Charlie that Speck was still alive, that she needed him to help bring Speck home. After he got Speck home, Mary took care of him until he was healthy. An article on the right says the doctor from Rock Springs was called to come help. Then on June 8th, 2024, I had a visit with Charlie Krause's great-great-grandson, Larry Krause. Larry told me that Charlie sliced Albert's Speck's stomach open because Speck was shooting cattle with his .22 in the butt. Both men were drunk. There's a picture of Charlie and Mary and a newspaper article. Albert Speck Williams' grave. Now, Albert did live until 1934, so 34 years after he had his stomach sliced open. He is buried at the Rocky Point Cemetery. There's a picture of his grave and also a picture of his death certificate.
This brings the end of this presentation, the year 1900, with Tom Horn scare in Browns Park. If you like this presentation, I do have more presentations online. Also, I do have 2 books I've written, Browns Park Haunted History and John Jarvie. Those books can be purchased on Amazon, or you can email me to buy a book from me. Thank you for listening to this presentation.